Welcome to Radiant Health, how to create health from the inside out. I'm your host, Lori Waka, and I'm so glad that you're joining me today. Hopefully you found a nice, quiet place where you can just sit back, relax, and take it all in. You never know, today might be the day you hear exactly what you need to hear. And I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today, Lori McDaniel. Lori's background includes 20 years of corporate technology consulting, training, and virtual learning design. Along the way, she became a transformational coach and facilitator and has coached hundreds of people over the last decade. Her specialty is bringing warmth and grace to subjects that are hard for people to talk about. She creates a safe chrysalis for growth and tender vulnerability that leads to deep and lasting transformation. Lori, I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Lori, and thanks for having me. And again, a great name. We share our name, it's so great.
I agree. I was thinking the same thing. Thank you. Well, I always like to start by asking, what does radiant health mean to you?
Well, I love that question, and I think that radiant health to me is it's multifaceted. I'm very holistic in how I see things, and I think that health is inside as well as outside. That's what I would say. First of all, a lot of people think that having green smoothies, exercising a lot, taking Soul Cycle, right? Like these are all great, and yet they're not going to equal radiant, deep radiant health and well-being. It has to be an inside as well as outside endeavor. So that's really what I would say, and that yeah, just that it's multifaceted. I think that's the bottom line.
I agree with you. And I really so firmly believe that it all starts inside. And when you are healthy inside,
Mhm.
and not and I'm really not just talking physical, but like, yeah, that
Mhm.
mental, emotional well-being, it really
Right.
does radiate out.
It
I,
really does.
yeah. And how would you say that you practice radiant health?
That's another great question. I love it. This is actually one of my favorite things to talk about is health and wellness. Even though I'm not a practitioner, I've trained as a wellness practitioner. I trained actually under Wei Hao Lau, who's one of your other speakers.
Yes.
Really, he's just brilliant and amazing and extraordinary. And he's been a wonderful mentor as well as a health mentor, health and wellness coaching mentor. So again, while I don't practice that, um, his approach is multifaceted, such that you're using, nature, the spirit, the mind, the body, the emotions, food, right? Exercise, even your home is an aspect of your health and well being. And so I really ascribe to that approach to life and to health and wellness. And I think that in terms of the radiance, I really think it comes most deeply from the emotional, spiritual, and then the nutrition and exercise. And so for the emotional and spiritual, for me personally, I meditate. I'm always also very intentional about my meditation,
Ah,
and so I participate in a body of work called Feminine Power. And there are very like particular skills and capacities that we're developing, interrupting old patterns, letting go of the past, very intentionally cultivating new patterns, new stories. And there's a meditative aspect to it. And so that's actually part of my daily practice. And I think it has that along with nutrition and exercise has really, given me a foundation of radiant wellness.
I love that. And I agree. That's kind of why I was drawn to Weihao as well, because he does pull from all the different aspects and
Uh-huh.
kind of brings it all in. And I see that you do that as well. And I've heard a little bit of this feminine power
Uh-huh.
group, and I love what you're doing, and that you like tell new stories or start new stories. And
Mhm.
that's so important. I think our stories that we've subscribed to in our head and that we've kind of allowed for years and years
Mhm.
is so much a part of what holds us back and blocks
Right.
us from not only Radiant Health, but just anything that we can move forward with and accomplish. And that,
Yes.
it definitely does have to do with Radiant Health. But I love that. And I love what you do as well, that you coach on subjects that are hard for people to talk about,
Mhm.
and speaking with confidence, because I know that's something that I've struggled with over the years. And I think a lot of times I keep myself small because I don't feel that confidence to speak my opinion, or even
Mhm.
if I feel strongly on a subject, I don't feel comfortable speaking up about it. And so I love that you're empowering. Um, I don't know if it's just women, but empowering um,
Mhm.
women for sure to to speak with confidence, to be secure in their thoughts. And I love that. Do you want to share a little bit about that? And
Sure.
because I
Yeah.
definitely believe that has to do with Radiant Health as well.
Yeah, I like how you're connecting that dot, from having confidence, to just be at ease and at home in yourself and your own value enough
Mhm.
to just speak confidently and clearly when it's a difficult subject.
Right.
And then I like how you're connecting that dot to wellness, because I think you're right. I think that, if you're not just freed up and able to really kind of back up to the beginning and connect to your worth, your value, right? Then you're not going to be able to speak up about things that matter to you, or express your own needs and desires and make requests to have those things, those met, for example. And then certainly, in the area of race and diversity and diversity, equity, and inclusion, for example, a very sticky subject for most people. So
Yeah.
it's like, if you're not really connecting those dots, not only will you not be able to really speak up, but also you have a suppression. There's like a lid, a ceiling, if you will, on what you're going to be able to experience in life, experience of your own worth, right? It's all correlated. If you're suppressed here or here, right?
Yes.
It's not just there. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, and something I hadn't really thought about. You're right. You can't like live fully and
Hmm.
be joyful in
Hmm.
everything you're doing if you are suppressed.
Right.
That's such an important and
Hmm.
powerful, factor. And I think maybe a lot of us, like, I didn't even really think about it that way.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
know that you're right, like that you're right. If we, it really does it. I mean, do you agree? I feel like it starts with that belief in yourself. And if you don't have that belief in yourself, that kind of that confidence isn't there. And
Hmm.
just like you were saying, therefore maybe you don't have that voice, that confidence in your voice and speaking up and even speaking your truth.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Um I do think it goes even beyond worth. I think that what I've discovered in the feminine power body of work that was developed and is led by Dr. Claire Zammit, she has you go even further back into feeling safe, right? And actually looking for the invisible limitations and old stories and patterns that have you not feel safe, emotionally, sometimes physically, but mostly like emotionally, kind of physically safe, emotionally and mentally safe. And then we have these patterns that are operating all the time that we don't even see, right? It's all invisible. And you can't really get out, you can't create on top of that, basically. Right. So if you have some self worth issues, but you don't even realize that you actually don't feel safe and you're not resourced, you're kind of depleted, let's say, emotionally and mentally, but again, invisibly, then it's really hard to even work on your self-worth.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and so it's been really wonderful the last few years for me personally to dive into that body of work, learn the tools and frameworks of feminine power, and what I'm now doing is adapting them, right? Like I'm using them to dismantle and heal the issues surrounding both racism itself and also the individual's blind spots and inner glass ceilings and the places where they're kind of suffering, right, in life. They're directly correlate to the levels of difficulty that they're having in speaking confident and clearly in a topic like racism, right? And kind of navigating all of what that means in our country and in our world.
I love that. I think, and that's such a beautiful movement towards feminine power. And
Mhm,
then I circling back to racism, I was actually wanted
mhm,
to bring that up again because
mhm,
so I'm going to be completely honest. That's a subject that is
mhm,
hard for me to talk about because
mhm,
I don't feel comfortable in that. I don't want to say the wrong thing or, and I'm going to be completely vulnerable with you right now and just like
uh-huh,
say that, I probably would be a perfect person for your coaching in your program because
mhm,
I don't have that confidence to speak about it. And I
mhm.
would love to have the confidence to speak and articulate, but I don't. So
Yeah.
I hear exactly what you're saying, and that's why I really love the work you're doing because you work with people like me and you help us. Do you mind talking a little bit about like your program and how I know
Sure.
you did a little bit just now, but if you could just kind of talk a little bit
Yeah.
more about it because I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And I really understand the difficulty. You know, I really have I've looked at myself too, and seen where things are difficult for me, and I go after them and build skill and capacity there. But I just want, you and everyone else to know that everyone has things that are challenging for them to talk about. It's just then, do we choose to develop skill and capacity and some muscle around it or not? Right? Do we
Yeah,
put some focus and energy on that or not? So I get it. I really
that,
get it. And in the program, I have a couple of different programs. I work with individuals and groups, and I also work with organizations. The Confident and Clear program, the one that you're talking about, so far it's been mainly for women. At some point this year, I'm going to open it up to men as well. But so far, what we've been doing is taking feminine power, which is it's a relational power. It can be for men as well, right? But so far, I've used it for women, and we dive into three aspects. One is the emotional work, right? Which is it's energetic as well. So it's emotional and energetic. There's a spiritual kind of aspect to it without naming it as such. So that the people who go through the program are they're very adept at being able to resource themselves. So move themselves from being depleted or operating from some kind of a weak, very young story or pattern that
yeah,
depletes them and their power to being able to be very resourced, very at home in their body, at ease with whatever somebody's saying with them. So they're not knocked off their center, coming from compassion, right? Deep listening. So that's kind of like the emotional work. And there's an intellectual work and a conversational work that we do too, so that you can really name the patterns. If you're not if you're not aware of the like white fragility patterns or like the anti-racism patterns, there are a couple of other kind of bodies of work that we weave in, and we just practice like, oh look, there's that one, right? Taking it out of being invisible
okay.
so that you identify it and then you can actually speak to it. And then the conversation work is just practice.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great because so much of I think of our behaviors and our patterns we maybe don't
Yeah.
even realize. And then
Right.
when
Hmm.
it's brought to our attention through
Hmm.
coaching or whatever
Hmm.
mechanism, then we can be aware of it, and
Yeah.
that's when we can kind of start whether working on it or
Hmm.
if we choose to work on it, or we can at least be aware and maybe
Right.
try to shift some of our patterns and our
Mhm.
behaviors. So I think that's really good. And
Yeah.
the more that you build confidence and can talk about different
Mhm.
subjects and whatever it may be, racism, politics, there's
Right.
so many different subjects that can be touchy out there, religion,
Mhm.
um, and work, just everything. The
Right.
more the more confident you can become in who you are and to stand for your beliefs.
Mhm.
I love that.
Absolutely.
I
And
love
in
that.
a way that is empowering for everyone. I think that that's, in our, I mean, we're conditioned to think that there has to be positionality. There's your side, my side of any conversation or any point of view. And I think that it's a skill that can be developed, that you can actually just hold the complexity and richness of, a multifaceted world. It's not just this or that.
Right.
And so that's something that people end up with, out of the program. It's a skill that gets developed.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. That's that kind of
Mm.
that seeking to understand the other side
Yeah.
is
Mhm.
something that
Mhm.
a lot of us don't necessarily do.
Yes.
And if
Right.
if if all of us did that, can you
Mhm.
imagine how
Right.
how
Right.
like ease and flow would just kind of happen? I
Mhm.
mean, not that just happens, but if everybody could seek to understand the other
Mhm.
side, I think what a beautiful place it would be.
Exactly, exactly. Mhm.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
then the clarity part, that's is that getting clear on kind of where, like you said, going back to maybe childhood or wherever the stories started for you? Is that
That is part of it. Um, I think that that's more the being able to name patterns. Like, there is a startling clarity that comes out of that emotional and energetic work that we do. There is a startling ability to just be clear, right? Because you feel safe, you feel resourced, right? You feel love for yourself. And so that does give you some clarity. And then there's another level of clarity that can come from actually studying the White Fragility body of work by Robin DiAngelo, the anti racism work by Kendi. If you really kind of dive into these bodies of work and then start practicing listening, like you can even watch television this is one thing I have people do, right?
oh,
So this week, your homework is listen to the people around you and also look at some TV or movies and identify the patterns that we've studied this week. Like, there's that pattern, there's that privilege pattern, there's that systemic racism pattern, right? There's like lots of these things that you learn. And once they're not invisible anymore, then you can show up in a conversation and you very clearly can see and hear the patterns in what people are saying and actually speak to them, right?
oh yeah.
And then I don't mean in an attacking way, right? But in a way where, um, like, for example, if I can hear that someone is coming from, let's say, colorblind, right? I'm colorblind, I don't see color, which is
Okay.
something that's dismantled and talked about in these bodies of work. I don't have to call them out on it, right? But I can speak very effectively to kind of interrupt that pattern gently,
Oh yes.
express my truth gently and clearly and firmly, right? All at the same time, and actually have a transformative interaction,
Oh, how powerful is that? And
right?
then I imagine someone like me who says, I don't feel confident because I don't want to say the wrong thing. I'm sure that
Mhm.
that's a pattern that you
Yeah, absolutely.
coach
It is a
on.
pattern. It is actually a named pattern that's out there, and nothing wrong with it, right? It's just, I think you just have to make it not, it's sort of this invisible thing like, well, I don't feel comfortable and I don't want to cause any harm. I don't want to look bad. So therefore, I won't say anything. And that's like this, and it becomes this repeated and sort of invisible way of being that I think a lot of people have. They kind
Hmm.
of just fades into invisibility, right? Somewhere over here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And I think a little bit for me comes from uh, I forgot what it is. It's a one of the many personality things out there,
Mhm.
and I'm a like a promoter and a supporter,
Uh-huh.
and so that supporting person in me, yeah, doesn't want to like hurt anybody or doesn't want to,
Right, right.
so that
Mhm.
is a little debilitating in that it keeps me from
Mhm.
taking that risk or
Right.
like yeah, like what if you do put yourself out there and risk maybe saying the wrong
Mhm.
thing, but maybe you say the right thing. It's.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
But
Mhm.
I like the educational purpose of what you're doing because it like you said, it gently helps you see the patterns, but yet it helps you work through them and get past them so that you can.
Right. Right.
And oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I can wait. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it seems like this is something definitely that can be used in just communication in general with people,
Mhm.
to just
Mhm.
help you communicate better, see patterns, and just work
Mhm.
with them when you talk to people,
Yes.
and then you're able to bring that confidence with you and
Mhm.
speak with purpose. I guess I should
That's
say.
right. Really well said, and that is what happens. People end up having um, like a more confident, clear, connected, conversational kind of life, if you will, with their family, for example, even when it has been difficult with someone. Like it's the same thing, right? It's nothing different. So people will have breakthroughs and healings, take place because they are bringing this space, this new space of compassion, listening, really rooted in their themselves and the worth that they're bringing, right? That their
Yeah.
opinion matters, they matter, this other person is precious to them, they matter. So there's like that connection and bridge. And that's often very much interrupting family patterns. Things can go awry in families, as we all know. And so this absolutely makes a difference in that area. And I would assert that it makes a difference everywhere. Everywhere there's that sticky difficulty.
What a good point. I wasn't even thinking along the family patterns, but yes, I feel like so much of the
Right.
dysfunction in families comes
Mhm.
from like lack of communication or
Mhm.
communication that's misunderstood
Yeah.
and walls are put up and
Mhm.
hiding, avoiding, all sorts of things. So what a great point that this could help communication within families as well. And
Mhm.
I
Right.
can see how that would totally transform people with just
Mhm.
how they communicate with families in any kind of relationship, I suppose,
Mhm.
business partnerships, friendships. Oh,
Right.
that
It's really quite profound. Yeah. Because it's the same shift everywhere. We kind of think of these things as different areas, but we're the one in all those areas. So, when we transform and shift and show up differently, then everything shifts. It's not just in one area. And I think that, bringing it full circle back to radiant wellness, that is a huge part. Like what we're speaking about is part of a foundation of wellness, and health and well being. I don't know that you can be fully healthy, fully well in every way. Physically, sure, right? Even emotionally to a point. But if again, kind of like if these things are suppressed or, if you're disconnected from people who really matter to you, or you can't show up as your full self in a conversation about racism or politics, right? There are going to be limits on your radiant wellness.
absolutely. And I
Mhm.
think, like you said, if you can't show up fully
Mhm.
in conversations, but then you're not really showing up fully in life. Is that
Right.
true?
Right. Absolutely. Well said. Yeah.
And if you're not showing up fully in life, then you're missing out, and
Yeah.
your quality of life
Right.
goes way down. And we think of quality of life as like I don't know, physical things
Mhm.
of having access, of course, to shelter and food and all of that, but really quality of life has so much to do with your emotional and mental well-being too.
Yes. Yes. How well can you connect to yourself? How well can you connect to others? Do you feel like you're living in a life positive universe that's supporting you? Or is life your adversary? Right? Like these are the things that are in the feminine power system, if you will. And if one or more of those three areas is cut off, kind of broken down, suppressed, etc., right? It's a real limit on what you're calling quality of life, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I like what you said earlier too about connection.
Mhm.
Like, really, it is about connection, isn't it?
Mhm.
Even if we don't realize that we want to be connected or that we are
Mhm.
connected,
Mhm.
it kind of comes down to that. Just
Yes.
because we all are connected, and
Right, right.
whether we realize it or not. So,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
coming back to that connection,
Mhm.
and if we could embrace it, but I know that that takes a lot of work for
It does.
you know
Yeah, that's right. Mhm.
and even me, somebody who I feel like I feel like I'm connected and I try to stay connected, but I'm learning as well that I'm in a program, like a leadership right thing program right
Mhm.
now,
Mhm.
um, and I'm I don't want to say getting called out, but sometimes I'm realizing that I'm a little disconnected and I don't even
Mhm.
realize it, and
Mhm.
so and I'm somebody who thinks that I aspire to be connected, and
Uh-huh.
apparently I don't. So,
Yeah, right, exactly. That's a perfect example. Yeah. Mhm.
well, and I know you've shared like a lot of great tips and just so many different valuable things we can be doing.
Mhm.
But is there like one actionable step that would be good for our viewers in terms of confidence, clarity, connection, whatever you're inspired to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't think you can go wrong, honestly, if you just take a step. Um, I think my personal bias and opinion is meditation. I think free flowing meditation is wonderful and necessary. And I think it's integrative, right? It's necessary. There's this other kind of meditation where you can be very intentional about what the outcome is. And so, if, for example, someone's having let's say they're having some sort of a breakdown in confidence or connection with the family member, or there's a racism sort of issue that's bubbling in their life, right? And it's just like they're stuck. Well, you can actually use a short meditation, 5, 10, 15 minutes, and have your intention be to have go in with the question, what do I need to see? What do you have for me, universe? Show me the way forward. Like just kind of go in with a request or a question, then meditate, and then like magic happens. It's been stunning to me over the past few years to have learned. This is one of many of the techniques that you learn in feminine power, but it has been stunning to me at how consistently you get that I get, and the people that I coach get what they need, and then they can take action on that, or they have a whole new opening, right? A whole new opening and understanding, and then they see new actions to take from that. So that's the thing that I'm championing the most, if in a soundbite fashion, is intentional meditation.
I really love that. And I don't know, it sounds sort of similar to something I used to do. And you've actually kind
Mhm,
of reminded me that maybe I need to start doing it again.
mhm,
Years ago, probably, well, 10 to 12 years ago, I was a personal trainer and
mhm,
I started doing energy healing to myself. And I
mm,
would start having my clients, or I started having my clients start with a little bit of energy healing before would go
Mhm.
into the session.
Mhm.
And so part of that was, I didn't really call it a meditation, but it was intentionally
Mhm.
getting to the root of some issues, whatever issue was on their mind. And I agree. I just found it so fascinating that if you could be, like you said, intentional and be
Mhm.
open. You need to
Right.
be open,
Exactly. Yeah.
and it will come to you. Those
Yes.
answers
Yes.
come to you.
Mhm.
And wow, I haven't done that in a long time, but I really
Mhm.
loved doing that. To me, that, and I think it's, maybe, I don't know, slightly different, but it sounds very similar as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love that idea. That's great advice. And thank you so much. I
Absolutely. Yeah.
also, I want to thank you. You had mentioned earlier to me that you had a free gift for our viewers if they were
Yes.
interested, and I'm going to go ahead and give you an opportunity to talk about that right now.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I have a couple of things. I have a couple of coaching spots that have opened up, and so I want to offer free coaching in either. It could be, dismantling and healing racism and getting empowered around those kinds of conversations. And it could also be, I work with women and leadership, women and kind of life balance as well. So, and I actually have recently started working with men in both as well. In organizations and individuals, I've always worked with men, and with individuals, I started working with men as well. And super, super great. I even call it feminine power, but truly, it's relational power. So it's applicable to everyone. So if
Yeah.
people would like a 45-minute free coaching in either, they're welcome to contact me. And the email's probably the best, which is Rainbow Bridges LM, like Lori McDaniel, Rainbow Bridges LM at Gmail. That's the simplest, fastest way to get to me.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. And I'll make sure to put that email in link in our email that goes out with this
Thank
interview.
you. Yeah.
And I love that. And I love that you work with men. Having a
Hmm.
son,
Hmm.
it's so much on my mind how little boys can grow up to be men who have deep issues that need addressed. And so I love that you work with men. So thank
Yeah.
you. And before we go, is there anything you would like to share, or something I may have forgotten to include?
Well, on the subject of what you were just talking about, I love what you're pointing to there, which is, this radiant wellness, right? And what we've talked about today, it's for men too, right? There's a whole world of deep healing and transformation that's available uh, for men who are really woo and for men who are not woo woo. Right?
That's a
There's a
good point.
practical, yeah, there's a practical set of tools and that I offer that your other speakers offer. I'm sure that there's a practical kind of not woo version of much of what we are standing for, right? And what you're standing for in this summit. And so I just want to encourage people to encourage the men in their lives. It could be that you're a man. Please encourage the men in your lives to dive into some sort of a healing modality or personal development, just something. And then the women too. I just think that it's time for us to call men in more because you're right, there is healing needed.
And I agree. And I think thank you for, touching on that again, because yeah, the more practice I do on myself, and
Hmm.
the more I just realize, and this is just me, but I think we all have that little child still inside of us that's been hurt or pained or, traumatized for whatever reason. And a lot, if we haven't acknowledged it and are not aware of it and haven't worked on it, it can really just debilitate us for the rest of our life.
Yeah.
And I see that in a lot of men, and I don't think that they are maybe given the, I don't know if I want to say opportunity, but
Hmm.
to work on themselves as much, or maybe they're not, society's expectation of them doesn't allow for that. Maybe that's what I'm trying to
Well
say. And
said.
oh,
Mhm,
thank you. And I
mhm.
think, I think having a son helps me realize that too. And like, it's so hard having children because I keep thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to mess up their life. but it's,
I
but it's,
understand that. Yeah, I have a daughter. I totally get that. Yeah.
yeah. Although it's probably too late. I mean, we can't be
You
perfect
do your
parents,
best.
right?
Right,
Yeah.
right,
So it's just inevitable, but I'm hoping to minimize the damage.
right, right. We just wanna keep it to a minimum. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for being here with me today and sharing all of your wisdom. I so much appreciate you. And I also want to thank our viewers. Normally, I would say thank you for being here, and I will see you tomorrow. But this is day 20. So thank you so much for spending your days with us, with me and all of the speakers. And I just so appreciate you. And I will send an email out tomorrow, but I just want to thank you for taking time for yourself and just being with us. Thank you, everyone, and bye.